Alright, welcome to a brand new video of the Targeted Individual Program, Targeted Individual Experience. Oh yeah, NY Predators Department using their sirens. Because I said welcome, and there was a car horn, and in my mind I was saying something that was a positive affirmation for me, and they don't like that, so they engaged in the remote monitoring, and so they use the sirens, right? Okay, remote monitoring. All right, like I said, when I talk about certain things, you know, for example, right? Like if I say certain letters to put together, right? NK, right? What else? CPU. Yeah, there you go. Sirens. There you go. CPU. That's one of them. What else? What else? Messiah. Okay. What else? Heru. All right. So anyway, I built a new PC, and but not really new. It's used parts with two. Well, actually, the case is new, and the CPU is new, but everything else, the motherboard is refurbished, right? And everything else is parts that I had there, right? So again, having, you know, those parts to, you know, every couple of years, like I said, I can't do it every year because the kids don't get their computers upgraded every year. But every, you know, 2-3 years, I'm able to build, you know, a few, you know, 2 or 3. And you know, so I built this one, and I named when they ask you, when you install Windows, what do you want to name this PC? So I put Heru the Christ, right? And I spelled Christ in the how you would translate it from the Kemetic spelling, right? Which is KRST. So that's what I named the PC, right? So Windows installed, but it didn't name the PC the name that I gave it. And I just started laughing. You know, it's like every time, like with my password, whenever I use Kemetic names, right? You know, they would all of a sudden it would change the password. So I stopped using it. Right? Let me tell you, when it comes to Kemetic science, Kemetic knowledge, they don't want us to have that at all. When it comes to the Netarus and the Netters, they don't want us to know that. They call it Egyptian God, not Egyptian gods. Right? Egypt never had a god. In your Bible, you know, Egypt had a god that led the Israelites out of, the Hebrews out of Kemet, right? Because in your very own Bible, it tells you about the so-called Yahweh Jehovah, NY Predators Department, being the god of Egypt, right? So he was the god in Egypt, and then he became the god out of Egypt. Again, it's in your Bible. There are passages that talks about, you know, I am the god of Egypt. Right? Imagine that. But then you should go read a book called Israel in Egypt. Right? See, the whole Hebrew fate came out of the Kemetic spiritual system. And I say spiritual, not supernatural. Supernatural, that's a European name. You know, all because they did not understand, and they could not understand the Kemetic sacred science. At least not until they started to realize that Kemetic sacred science is actually science, philosophy, math, chemistry, engineering. That was the Kemetic mystery system. And the names that we give the environment, such as shoot, newt, right? The principles of being human, our human nature, the various aspects of our human nature, they gave that names. Just like we say, you know, certain things, right? Like when we say our intuition and so forth, right? The Kemetic name for that would be something else, right? Would be whatever it is that the Kemetic name is. So when they're speaking about those things, they're not talking about a God. They're talking about a principle of nature, principle within us as human beings, right? And so they gave those principles a physical representation. You know, consciousness, that is what they call Christ, Haru, Asa, right? Father and the Son, all right? No one comes to the Father except through the Son. That's a Kemetic principle. All right? So, you know, like I said, we have scholars that talked about these things, but they're not given like prime time, you know, shows. You know, only the Europeans who like to whitewash history, right, and give us their interpretation of certain things, when we know and we have the interpretations ourselves, right? We just don't, you know, like I said, we're just conditioned not to listen to our scholars who have done much more study and work in terms of archaeology than some of these so-called European archaeologists who are writing books based off of other people's work, right? As Dr. Ben used to say, you know, he said, as a professor, you know, I've seen other professors write books on Kemet and have not even went to Kemet, right? Have not even went digging the dirt, right? Have not held an ancient artifact in their hand, but they're writing books on Kemet. That's why I said no one can ever make me doubt the work of Sheikh Anta Diop, Dr. Yusuf Ben Jacobin, Dr. Charles Finch, Anthony Burr, and so forth. These are black scholars that did the work. These are black scholars that... Come on. You get on the bus?
No.
Okay. All right. Clowns. Bunch of clowns.